Like you said, my name's Stephanie Moody-Geisler. I'm the epidemiologist for the office at DCF. I work on both on all three now, the PFS, the STR, and the SOR grant. We're going to be talking just a little bit about some of the data that we have for STR. Any SOR questions I would like to leave until later. We'll be talking about the GIPRA and all that stuff after Darren does his Vivitrol presentation, so we're just looking at STR stuff right now. So Uta already warmed y'all up for this, but there are some data issues, data quality issues, missing data, data errors. I was unable to use the spreadsheet data as it stands right now because of these issues. My team and I will be getting back to all of you shortly with errors and missing information so that we can try and get that nice and a little bit cleaner so that we can have better data to present on towards the end of the grant, because we're almost done and we'd really like to have nice, succinct data that we can present on. That being said, there's also issues with data in SAMUS and FASMs. So what you are going to be seeing today, please have that caveat in mind. This data is not exactly the best, it's not the soundest, but it's what we have, so it's what we're going to be presenting to you. An example, why I'm saying all this, we have about 18,000 episodes of care in FASMs and SAMUS that have the STR-OCA attached to it. Just looking at some of the issues we have, there's 6 individuals, 6 episodes of care that actually somehow have a service with an STR-OCA associated with it when they were a patient way back in 2013. So I'm not quite sure how they time traveled and were able to get a STR-funded service, but some things like that that are kind of wonky in the system right now we're going to need to clean up. There are over 2,000 individuals that don't have an opioid or an opioid use disorder listed. This is a opioid grant, so we might want to look at those individuals. There's also over 7,000 episodes that don't have a MAT modifier. So this affects our ability to look at retention rates, to do all that data stuff that you mentioned. We'd love to be able to separate things out by everyone that's on Bupe, everyone that's on Vivitrol, but we can't right now with any certainty. And then there's also over 400 episodes that have more than one MAT modifier, and I understand that people can switch medication during an episode of care. That's fine, but there probably shouldn't be a bunch of people that have all 5 modifiers listed. I'm glad someone found that funny. So these are some of the high-level basic things that we're going to need to work together on getting cleaned up. So, looking at the monthly enrollment figures that we've had throughout STR. This first one right here, these are the people that we've rolled over from other funding sources. So about 4,500, you can see that the blue is newly enrolled, which means they've just gotten into the STR funding. The red is discharges, and then over here in green are the current enrollment. So I want you to think of these guys right here as completely separate. These are individuals who've rolled over. They're not included right here. But as you can see, we've had this lovely increase in stability and another increase in individuals that have enrolled in episodes of care with STR funding. And we've been able to keep a good number of them. Again, caveat, 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 the 40% of people that do not have an MAT listed, these numbers are also different than the numbers that Uta presented earlier. These are the episodes of care that have an MAT modifier, and I only counted the ones that had the one MAT modifier because we weren't able to separate at that time individuals that had 3 or 4. So these are all the episodes of care with one modifier that was listed. Retention. Repeat, rinse, repeat. Caveat, caveat, caveat. These are our retention figures for each of the 5 MAT modifiers that we have in the system. We have at discharge. So these are the median number of days in treatment. As you can see, methadone has the highest, and it's highest across the board. For 90, 180, and 365 days, we're looking at percentages of retention at discharge. I'm not really going to talk too much about this because, like I said, caveats. Here are the discharge reasons that we have listed in SAMHSA and FASMs. One of the things right now that I've noticed is we have a big discrepancy in what is listed in I'm combining those two. SAMHSA and FASMs, big discrepancy between those systems and what we have listed in the STR spreadsheet. In the STR spreadsheets, we have over 60% individuals that are administratively discharged or left treatment. It's very different looking here. Let's see here. Here's the completed episodes of care. That's a combination of with some substance use and with no substance use. That says 24. Yeah, I have actual numbers on the next slide, but that says 24%. 33% left voluntarily before completing treatment. These are non-treatment episodes. We have administrative discharge up here is only 6%. So like I said, that's very different than what we're seeing in those STR spreadsheets. Here's the actual numbers that we have. So vast majority of the discharges per episode are for non-treatment services, detox, etc. And moving on down the line. Now, the thing that I want to look at are these deaths listed at 31. It's about 6 times the number of deaths that we have listed in the STR spreadsheets. So that's a concern of mine right there, some of the issues that we're having. Granted, a few of these are doubled up a little bit. Some of them have that non-treatment service and a treatment service episode, so few of them are, but it's still a lot more than what we're getting reported in the STR spreadsheets. So I just wanted to take a few of those deaths out and look at them. We have these arrows in blue. We have individuals that died and were simultaneously non-compliant with agency rules on the same day. So I don't know which preceded which. Is dying not compliant with agency rules?
Agency
I
rule
don't know.
You shall not die on
yes,
property.
you shall not die. So we have several of these. So this is the type of data error that we'd like to work with you with and try to get these corrected. We also have a couple of zombies walking around. This individual supposedly passed last December, but they're still active in the system on one of their episodes of care. So yeah, don't know what's up with that. This also applies to the STR spreadsheet. We have individuals that have died in SAMHSA and FASMs, but are still alive on the STR spreadsheets. So again, we'd love to work with you to try and correct some of these things. This one's here just because it was a concern of mine. This individual had only had 2 episodes of care listed in SAMHSA FASMs under the STR for OCA. They were only in for 1 day, with the first for a non-treatment episode for 1 day, and then they came back a month later, 1 day, and they died. So that's just, that's a concern to me that happened. Then we have a concurrent enrollment where someone enrolled, they left voluntarily, but they were also in another enrollment and then they ended up dying. So that's just a little confusing where we have multiple episodes of care activated. And then we have this person down here that seemed to have died last year and then came back for another round of treatment and died again. So I'm not sure if that's quite Lazarus or a zombie, but that's a concern. So these are just a few things that I want to talk to you about. Now, I have two assistant epidemiologists working with me. One of them's here today. This is Paula Williams. She is a doctoral student at FAMU in epidemiology. I'm really happy to have her on my team. And then we also have Alex Perotti, who is a demography student, master's student at FSU. He couldn't be here today because he has finals. But they will be working with me on cleaning up the STR data and into the SOAR grant. So if you get emails from them, that's who they are. And we are going to be going through all of the SAMHSA and FASMS episodes of care that have a STR-funded service. We're going to be looking at all of them, seeing issues that are appearing in the data, and sending out a report to all the MEs. Hopefully they will then forward it to all their providers so that we can get that cleaned up. We will be doing the same thing with the STR spreadsheets soon. I know that this is coming up with the end of the fiscal year, so we'd really like to get the SAMHSA and FASMS cleaned up before that closes out. And then we're going to need to get the STR spreadsheets cleaned up for our closeout report with the feds. I know this is going to take a lot of work on everyone's part. There's going to be a lot of emails going back and forth. There is going to be probably a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration. So hopefully we can all work together and get this sorted out so that we can present the best data we can, not only to the legislation, but to the feds. And UTA can continue to be like, look, we're awesome, look at this. So thank you very much, and I'll be back up shortly to—
No, you're gonna do it right now. All right, and this is why we need it. Because we can't go replace this with state money or with federal money unless we can talk about what we're doing. And I know the data frustrates the hell out of everybody, but the data also allows us to build the case to get the funding that is necessary to serve these patients. So it's very critical.
And it should inform us in our practices, right? If we're seeing big difference in engagement, differences between the medications and so forth. It should, that's why we have data, is to inform practice and to see if what we're doing works.
So this has come on down as part of the SOAR grant. This is mandated by the feds. No one can get out of it. If you have an individual that has a SOAR-funded service, they must fill out the GPRA. No exceptions. Sorry, everybody. We need that 80% follow-up. That's also mandated within the grant. You can't get out of it. There are 6 time points in which we need the GPRA filled out. There is the enrollment, and this is the first day of service. So for new individuals, this is the day that they walk into your office and they start their service. For individuals that are rolling over from STR, it's that first day that they get a service that is being charged to SOR. So STR, rolling right in. They do need to complete a GPRA. And also, please don't forget about the supplemental GPRA. So there are questions that are missing from the GPRA right now, including, opioid overdose questions. You think they would be a little important for an opioid grant. But those questions are on the supplemental. So please don't forget that for every time point to which you are filling out the GPRA, you must also do that supplemental. It's just that 2-pager. The paper forms that you have right now, those are the latest drafts that we have for the new GPRA that is coming.
Which the feds will call the SOAR.
Yes. So
something.
There's going to be some interchange of verbiage here. For simplicity, we're calling it the GPRA right now, but I believe in some of the documents that we've sent you, we've called it the SOAR tool, the SOAR assessment tool. These names are all going to be interchangeable. So they're all going to refer to the same 2 tools, the big, long, 30-something page one that everyone loves, and then the shorter supplemental one. We have employed a contractor, FEI, to do the WITS system. So this means that we will be putting all of this information into the WITS program. Hopefully, a lot of you got trained recently in WITS. Anyone missing a training? Anyone needed to be training? Everyone get some? Okay, awesome.
Let me talk about that a minute. I know there's been concerns coming from the trainings about it is duplicate entry. I own that, but FEI is the only vendor who already has the GIPRA built into their system, so they didn't have to pay to do it. They're going to make they're already updated their system to the SOAR document as it is right now. They're standing ready if OMB makes additional changes before the final comes out. They can do it like that. The data points, I think, are 7 data points. It's like name, date of birth, something, race, gender. So I totally get it's double entry, and there's been lots of nasty emails coming to my office about double entry and why doesn't it pull out of EHRs. Well, for one provider, I know that makes sense, but when you're dealing with a state and you're dealing with 17 different EHRs, you're not going to find a vendor that is going to be able to take information from every different medical record system. So again, reiterating that part of the funds you're getting through SOAR, you can absolutely hire a data person to do all that data input, because you're right, it's going to take immense amount of time to put 36 pages. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, I know providers used to be able to do it themselves, upload their own GIPRA, and SAMHSA will not allow that. They will only let the state upload the GIPRA into the SPARS system. So they will not give accounts to any of the SOAR providers. It has to come through us first, and there's only one entity that can submit all the state's forms. So I get it. I can only say I have empathy, but we need to change the conversation from how are we going to do it, away from this is bad and can I please not do it, to how are we going to get it done.
So while we are waiting for OMB to finalize the newest version of the GIPRA/SOAR tool, everyone should be filling out paper forms of the tool and the supplemental tool. I know this is going to be a pain to then go into WITS and then back enter all that data, but unfortunately that's what we have to do right now. Right now, hopefully, do we have any of the managing entity WITS administrators here, the tech people? No? Okay. So our office, we have already given permissions to all of the ME WITS administrators, who should be the same individuals that are the technical administrators for FASMs and SAMHS. We are now live with the basic patient entry data in WITS. Everyone has received training. So the ME should now be giving providers administrative permissions, and the providers can give the staffers that need to enter the data permissions. So we need to start entering the basic data for all of the SOAR-funded individuals into WITS. That should start as soon as possible, so that when the when the GIPRA finally gets added, we can just start throwing those in.
It doesn't have to be input into WITS the same day. Okay. Usually WITS has like a 30-day window that they accept the information.
We're going to have, it's going to be, we don't know the exact time frame with the new tool when they want that entered by, but it will be open in WITS for a while. We will want people to put the data in on a rolling basis. This isn't going to be like the spreadsheets where it's due on the 20th of every month. This is going to be a rolling basis for the data entry. Now, every month we will be running reports to check on, completion rates, the 80% follow-up, all that stuff.
And you'll be able to do that for your
Yes.
programs as the administrator.
So if someone leaves SOAR funding for whatever reason, either they ended their episode of care, they're considered complete, or if they end up qualifying for another funding source, they will need the discharge. So let's say it happens at 2 months, they don't need to do the 3-month and the 6-month post baseline, but they will need to do the discharge and the 3-6 follow-up.
We need to have that conversation with the MEs on which category to put it in. As Marcia's writing furiously. Yeah.
And I don't think I sent out.
The other thing too, if it's a unit rate, build it in your unit rate. Up your unit rate so you can afford to,
We did get a couple questions. There were some concerns about how you all will charge for the 3-month and 6-month post-discharge GIPRA, because if the episode of care is closed, how are you going to charge it? This is direct from Jimmers, our lovely contract manager. He says that it can be direct staff hour reported as a non-client specific bundled project code under federal project grants.
So you could so each ME could work, so if you're working in terms of, if you guys are contracted on a fee for service, right? You can do, under the special, the federal grants project code, you can have like a bundled data thing under the SOAR OCA, right? Where you include the salary of a data person as well as the time for the follow-up surveys.
My presentation is actually a combination of both the STR and the state-funded portions of the program. So if you see figures up there and you say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what Stephanie presented, it's because I also have your alcohol patients rolled into these figures. So the nice thing is that we've grown substantially over our start back in November of 2015 when we only had $1 million, up to now where we're a little over $5.5 million. And I think, if my guessing is right, that will be a little bit higher with the SOR funding this coming fiscal year. So we're in really good shape. We are trying to protect that breakdown of this year's money. We're trying to protect that $1.01 million in non-recurring general revenue. And how close are we on resolving that, or is it still in the...
They went into budget conference yesterday, and who knows?
Okay. So we're trying really hard to at least keep capacity at the current levels. The nice thing too was that Uda and her staff made available to us an extra $706,000 so that we would be able to take care of alcohol-only patients. We had to put a moratorium on new admissions for a little while, and that's since been cleared. And then the nice thing is that we have a clear stop and start point. STR for the Vivitrol program will end midnight April 30th. And on May 1st, you will click into SOR. We will be the billing point in our data system for your GIPRA interviews under SOR. So the only thing that you have to report to us is that you did it. We'll in turn work with the Department of Children and Families to make sure that we validate that the GIPRA interview has been entered into WITS. So all you'll have to do, and we're billing that out at similar to the rate that was mentioned with the managing entity at $60 per interview. Unfortunately, we can't do an incentive to encourage the follow-up rates to be higher. We've been turned down at every opportunity, every attempt. The nice thing is that the program's grown substantially over time. We're projecting to serve well over 1,500 patients this year in the DCF program. The interesting thing in looking at the patients as they present is that the majority of women that present for services are actually opioid use disorder, whereas the majority of the men that present are alcohol use disorder. The average age for men tends to be a little bit higher than the women. And in general, overall, our patients, we're slowly moving in the right direction where for the longest time, more than half of our patients were alcohol use disorder only. And we've since moved in the direction where we have opioid use disorder and combination disorders presenting at a much higher rate. So if you look at the asterisk at the bottom, the most recent quarterly report draft that I've done, we're up to 55% opioid use disorders, which is fantastic. The other thing that we were curious in reaching certain racial groups or ethnicities is that we've increased tremendously from the start of the program in 15-16 for Hispanic clients or patients, and now what you see at the bottom is that we're up to 23, almost 24% Hispanic clients now. And the rest of it is just a quick breakdown. The one thing that'll be interesting to look, and I haven't had a chance to dissect it, is the unemployment rate is pretty much close to 70% when they come in at screening. It's also 70% unemployment at the time of discharge. We are we're keeping people much longer, providing more shots on average. So I anticipate that those that get more shots may have a much better employment rate come discharge. But that we'll have to do some further analysis on. Our successful completion rate by traditional measures, which is taking the outcome reason 1, which is completion of the MAP protocol as you design it, your medical staff, or 2, which is substantial progress toward completing that, divided by the total of successfuls and unsuccessfuls. Unsuccessfuls are reasons 3 and 4. We have 5 discharge reasons total. The 5th one is a neutral. That means they had to transfer to another provider because they moved, because they needed to go into a more intensive level of care and things of that nature. When you take into consideration, what we ask you to do is look at their overall life functionality at the point that they discontinued services with you. And if there are improvements that you can attribute to being in the program, make sure you weigh toward the successful completion. So when you take into account the elimination of cravings as a key indicator, it bumps the successful rate of how well the MAT or the medication did up to 74.5. What we've learned, it takes typically 3 to 4 months to get these programs off the ground to a good operational status. The female patients tend to be younger than males and more likely to present for opioid abuse dependence. We've increased, as I mentioned, our service provision to Hispanics. African American and Alaskan Native patients present with alcohol use disorder primarily. Our follow-through rates over the 4-year period have gone from 50% to almost 80% in some of our more recent quarterly reportings. And that y'all have done an excellent job. We used to use the screening as the first point of contact, and we asked you to shift that to when you have patients in other services, you have a good rapport with them, you have a better sense of their likelihood to follow through on care and engage. Those are the folks we want you to screen. We didn't want you to use screening as the first point of contact. Since we've made that move, we've seen tremendous gains in our follow-through rate from screening to medical assessment, from medical assessment to the injection protocol. And as retention has improved over time, our average shots per discharge patients, that's successful and unsuccessful, is 3.27, which started out below 2. Any questions? How's that for quick?